Welcome everyone. Thank you very much for joining me in this session. And as you imagine, we're going to spend the next 30 minutes or so, probably 40, talking about design, right? Design is a very fascinating topic, I would say. So if you start digging into design, you will start see design pretty much everywhere. But before starting going deep into design, I would like to introduce another topic, which is another topic I'm really passionate. It's about food. So, yeah, isn't it? So, I would like to start telling you a small story about one thing I experienced a couple of weeks ago. So, there was my girlfriend that decided to celebrate one very special day, cooking something very exquisite. So basically, she went online, she made some research, she went through all those websites talking about cooks and recipes, and she found this thing here, this great dessert called red velvet macarons. So, very fancy, isn't it? Yeah? So, we spent pretty much half a day chopping, mixing, heating, cooking, and having a very strict approach on the recipe. Because, I mean, this is, even if it looks like a small dessert, it's a very complex thing. I mean, you have to do a lot of operation. It's very complicated stuff. So we spent a lot of hours doing all those operations, and at the end, we made all those small things, and we put it in the oven, and we waited, right? We waited a couple of hours. And the result wasn't what we expected, right? It was quite different. And the same feeling of, I don't know, disappointment, let's say. Yeah, this is the same feeling that I have when I'm trying to do something different with people that are working in the design space. So people that are trying to do like product design, experience design, service design. We are trying to apply something. Let's say we are taking a recipe, something that comes from the outside, from another word, from another experience. We are trying to stick very strictly on the things because it worked. It worked for very smart people, so it's actually a very good thing. But the result is not what we expected. And that's why I started asking myself questions, and I said, okay, I mean, this thing, how to manage design, how to do something different, how to solve what are the design-related problems that I encountered in my daily life. This looks a very interesting topic, so let's start digging into it. But before getting into the juicy part, let's get to know each other. So, my name is this one. I'm Matteo Cavucci. I'm Italian, but I'm living in Berlin, Germany, where I'm working for this company called ThoughtWorks. I'm a senior consultant at ThoughtWorks. So, probably you know already ThoughtWorks is a company full of talented people, and we are trying to deliver the best solution for our clients' problems, and at the same time, we are trying to revolutionize the IT industry and create a positive social challenge. This is something that makes ThoughtWorks very different from other companies. And a little bit of my career. I mean, I'm here because I started many years ago basically doing coding. I spent a lot of time doing coding and building things for the web. But I was very fascinated about products, about design, about things works, and I started getting more and more into the design space. And at a certain point, I found myself working, let's say, in the edge between doing the things, between coding and imagining the future, imagining how those things should be made. So, let's say, how to make the right things for people. So I worked always in the edge for many years. I spent a lot of times there. And at the end, I have to say that both of the disciplines, both of the activities, looks pretty familiar, but looks pretty similar to me, because it recalls me this quote from this guy called Herbert Simon that says that all the things we are doing are happening in this gap between the things that we have now and the things that we would like to have. So in this tiny space between how the things should be, like the preferred ones, and the existing situation that we are facing today. So what about you? How many people have to deal with design, with product design, service design, all those kind of stuff? Well, just a couple, huh? how many of you have, I don't know, interesting stories, let's go like this, about how to manage design? Not many. Horror stories? Horror stories, some. But okay, it's fine, because we are going to dig about this topic a little bit. So this is an overview about what we are going to discuss. So I will try to start defining a little bit what are the boundaries of when we are talking about design. What does it mean, design? Where design comes from? And then we are trying to get to focus a little bit more on the challenges that we have right now when we are trying to apply design in the digital year, in the digital space, so creating digital products. And then I will try to introduce a different idea of design, a different idea of how to manage those processes. So let's start from here. Let's start from asking ourselves, what is design? And well, it's a very interesting question. So I have to say that to get the sense of, to get an answer, let's start from here. Let's start from I would say, a strict connection that design has with the industrial world. Because design, as we intend, comes when we had a huge progress in let's say, in the technological field that was allowing people to build very complicated stuff, like cars, right? And when you start building cars and you start building the capacity of producing things, well, you need some kind of design, right? You need some design for building cars that would be usable for people as well as desirable. And you will start also creating new markets because people start having new needs, and you need to design products that, like we could say, everyday products. And we will try to design also spaces and how people interact each other. And of course, I mean, designing communications and stories and values and trying to bring ideas from people to people and enhance our capacity to persuade. One of the things that was born in those years when the industrialization was taking the stage was definitely this, where what we call the scientific management. So, since we was allowing all those people to build new things, we had the need of developing some kind of way of organizing all those people that was contributing on this effort. And scientific management was kind of answer for that, right? So it was developed by Henry Ford, Frederick Taylor, yeah, of course, Henry Gantt, that was making the Gantt diagram. And one of the principles that are inside there that comes with the scientific management that we can observe still in many places is this. So a strict separation between people that decide what to do, like managers and some kind of people that are sitting in this side, and people that are on the, let's say, on the shop floor, that are doing the job. So you have this paradigm that didn't exist before, because before industrialization we had other kind of work. You know, we had like craftsmanship, other different things, and with industrialization we had this paradigm here, a strict separation between those roles, and this worked very well when we started to produce things in a manufacture. So like assembling things, making physical product, making objects, worked very, very well. And let's say, I mean, this is a very simplistic figure, but it gives us an idea. So it works pretty much like this, right? So we have a leadership that will decide somehow what to produce. They will engage a management structure that will start, you know, defining the roles and defining the how to produce things. And then you're going to have a design, right? A design phase where people, designers, will try to frame problems, try to find solutions, and pass all those specifications to the production line, to the shop floor. And this, I mean, this is a setup that is quite popular, is still quite popular in many organizations. And if we are zooming in a little bit on the design phase, we see pretty much those things, because I mean, designers used to do this job for many years, and they have the sort of body knowledge that is basically founded on those three things. So starting to, I said, framing the problem, so having ideas about how to solve problems, then trying to build prototypes, making tests with users, because I mean, designers used to have this kind of feedback, quick feedback with people, right? So think about, I don't know, an architect that goes to the place where their building is making, and you know, they are trying to have those kind of conversation, as well as design, like industrial design. They are trying to engage a sort of test. But we see here that there is a very strict separation. So those phases, ideate, prototype, and test, have to finish on a certain point. Because then you can start making production and distribution. So there is a strict definition where all those activities starts and when those activity ends. And all this process was made having one single idea in mind, so optimizing for scale and efficiency. Because, I mean, a design worked very well when it was easy to produce, when it was actually optimizing the capacity of producing multiple things in less time and with less expenses, let's say. And if we are talking about quality, we would say that quality for design, from a designer point of view, is how much the specification, the initial specification, was respected, was kept in mind when it was actually made. So you have like a blueprint that was defining how this object have to be made, and then you have the product, and how similar those things are, that's pretty much the quality, right? And if you're talking about design, you see that the best design are some kind of project, some kinds of requirement, I mean, some ideas that was made somewhere, somehow, at a certain point, and it didn't change it too much. You see, this project here, this design is great. It didn't change it for decades since when it started. So we can say this. We can say that at the end, design looks more, well, it's very similar about making plans. You know, the act of design is an act of figuring how the future could be and making an idea of a product, a thing that could work in the future. So it's a lot about specification, it's a lot about design, it's a lot about planning. And everything that is not on the plan is a defect. So if we are trying to describe how these things will work in the future, we have to be very, very strict, because then people in the shop floor, they will make exactly as we said. So we are going to spend a lot of time here defining things to allow people to make those things with less defect as possible. And, I mean, a lot of things happened in the meanwhile, right? So there was a lot of changes also in the manufacturer, like, say, I mean, Toyota production system. Let's think about, you know, all those lean practices. And also, I mean, everything, a lot of things also changed in how we make software. Because at a certain point, we start making digital products, not just objects, not just things that we can touch, but something that was, you know, living in this space of a digital realm, let's say. And digital products are different. So they comes with some, they could have a lot in common with things, with objects. But if you see, but even if, I mean, we're pretty familiar with that, I think that there are a lot of things, that there are a lot of differences. But it's hard to perceive those kinds of difference, because I mean, we see more over and over when we are talking about software having metaphors, so how people describe those things, you know, that is related a lot with objects. You know, like software is like a house, software is like building a bridge. You know, it's like, okay, you have to call the engineers, they will make the plan, and then other engineers will come, they will start building it, and then it's going to be a test, and then it's going to be this, and it's going to be that. Or a house is even better, right? Because you have to imagine where the toilet will be, where the door and the plugs, and so on and so on. So we are keep thinking about software in a very physical dimension, right? And this contradicts one of the main characteristics that software has, because software changes very, very easily if you compare to manufacture, or if you compare to building a house. So if you want to change something when you're actually building it, Change it with software. Well, sometimes could be hard, but it's still simpler than changing a thing that you're going to manufacture for millions of copies, or a big building that you are actually in the building phase. And another characteristic is the fact that software lives in a market where it's actually very hard, if not impossible, to predict what is going on. What are the expectations of people? Because, I mean, it's a very complex environment where, let's say, disruption happens at a very, very fast rhythm. And it's not the classic manufacturing or industrial era market when people, I mean, companies had a certain level of control on the distribution, on the marketing, and on the innovation, because there was high barrier level, so it was actually very hard to build a new product and put it in the market. It's easy to build an application. It's relatively easy to build a new platform for whatever you want. So the market is different, the medium is different, and instead of optimizing for scalability, let's say, we need to optimize for another thing, which is crucial, which is, we can call this idea of responsiveness and adaptability, a sense of, resilience, in a sense. Because this is the key of a good software. I mean, something that is ready to change, because it can leverage on this native characteristic that software has to be something that could adapt quickly and could react to situations that we can imagine. But even if this is an idea that is start becoming popular, when I go to clients and when I see how clients work, especially with design, I can see this paradigm. I can see this, let's call it this setup. So we have like stakeholders somewhere sitting on a high floor that decide what to do, in a sense. So they will allowing people having budgets, and they will start initiatives, and they will start, an effort. And then you have like product owners, product managers. They will get in touch with designers as well, and designers will put a lot of energies, a lot of efforts on making this thing here that we can call the design artifact. And the design artifact, if we see closer, it's about defining things. I mean, it's a heavyweight set of characteristics that needs to be, let's say, implemented by those people here. I mean, if we are lucky, we can have some kind of roundup of user testing, so we can meet users and we can show the things that we have in mind and having this kind of relationship. But we're going to talk about that. But see the distance between the designers and the actual people over here, because then it's going to be development, it's going to be quality, we are going to push it into production. And in the meanwhile, designers are not sitting in a chair just waiting for those guys. They are doing another project, they are doing another plan. So normally those people are jumping from a project to another, having those things that many people says like dual track. Like, have you heard about that? Like dual track or separate speeds for design and development. That's pretty risky, because at a certain point you can discover that there is something wrong happening around here, and the cost of change, it's dramatic high. I mean, and this happens a lot of times, right? Because things are very good at the inception, are defined into requirements, the design is approved, coding goes well, check. But when the ideas arrives where the people are, well, some things can change. Those people can have different needs. And the original, let's say, the original pitch, the original solutions wasn't good at all. And the cost per change is magnitude, it's very high. And this is contradict another law, let's call it, that says this, that every change, every information that we can gather during the process, it's a value. It's something that we should keep in mind, because it gives us a new opportunity to deliver a better solution for people. And, I mean, we are, in a certain sense, contradicting, trying to fixing all those specifications before starting making it. Because this is what happened with designers. You know, this is what happened with classic design approach. That we have a lot of energies, a lot of efforts that takes place before the launch. So we're going to have a product. We're going to imagine how this product should look, how are the interactions, and we're doing all those operations before launching. Then we are launching the products, and okay, next one, right? And another thing that happens is this, right? That we are launching something, and people, in the meanwhile, has changed. Because when people get exposed to a new idea, their needs changes. So it's a moving target. It's not something, so people's needs, it's not something that we can capture one for forever, let's say. It's something that when people get the opportunity of evaluate a new service, they will develop a new need. So it's a constant movement. And let me give you an example. I mean, I will not give you an example. I will let this guy here tell you an example.
I was on an airplane and there was internet, high-speed internet on the airplane. That's
Yes.
the newest thing that I know exists. And I'm sitting on the plane and they go, open up your laptop, you can go on the internet. And it's fast and I'm watching YouTube clips. I'm in an airplane. And then it breaks down. And they apologize, the internet's not working. The guy next to me goes, this is bull. Like how quickly the world owes him something.
Yes.
He knew existed only 10 seconds ago.
Right.
Okay, he's Louis C.K. He's a great comedian, and he perfectly captured what I was saying, right? So that when people gets in this new world where those things exist, well, their needs changes. And changes a lot. So how many times you had this situation when you was developing something and then the client, I mean, somebody was saying, oh yes, thank you for this, but we actually learned that we need another thing. I was in this project. Yeah, but you know, when you are talking with designers, they say, yeah, I know what you're saying, I know this is a problem, yes, great, but we have a solution. And the solution is research. So investing a lot of energies on research and, you know, getting the needs of those people before they will get engaged with the product. So we can be sure that our project will be a success. So success depends about how much research we are going to invest. And those people are very, very passionate about advocating research. Especially designers are always pushing management to invest on research. So let's do more research and let's engage people and so much. But there is a truth behind research, which is this. Because we are talking about research in social field. And it's very hard to take social science as a proper as a science like physics or mathematics or other natural science, because in those fields you have some experiments that you can replicate, right? Because you are talking about physics, and if you are doing something, and if you're discovering something in the physics world, it means that you can replicate those experiments given the condition and given the set. It's very different with psychology and with social science, let's say, because a lot of things. Because humans are complex, and it's very hard to get right information. So have you heard probably about those experiments that was conducted in US during the 60s, the Milgram experiment, or for example the prison experiment, where people was like students was asked to play guards and and people in jail. So those experiments are very hard to replicate, and they fail when they're trying to replicate. Why? Well, this is just a subset of reasons. So you can have bias, you can have poor experimental control, inconsistency on measurement, demand, consideration of statistical power, and this is probably my favorite one, which says that people will cherry pick significant results. That is something, you know, that we already heard today, that people will not see what they will not to see, and in a certain sense they will find what they want to find in numbers and in experiments. And this happens because, I mean, we are definitely working with a complex adaptive systems, which are humans, right? Like social structures. And this is actually about complexity. And yes, I mean, in a sense, research can help and can give us, let's say, a direction, a starting point, or of where we should move, a sort of direction. But definitely it's not about truth. I mean, if you are looking for truth, probably religion is a better place. So research is okay. I mean, it gives our things, but it's not about being certain that the product will work. So, how can we solve this? Well, we are talking about complexity. I believe that here many people are familiar with this. So, like agile software development, right? Something that was coming from very bright people working in the development areas. And they said, okay, you know, developing software is complex and we need to do something. And they was coming with those ideas, those values and principles that were summarized in the Agile Manifesto. And this is actually a very interesting experience, I would say. And one of the best, one of the things I like the most from the Agile universe is this, is the fact that we cannot control our environment. So our ability of influencing users, it's very, very low. So what we can do is trying to optimize what we have, our lack of control, and following this rule, right? We heard also today, like it's about expect and adapt. And I mean, this is pretty clear in what we are doing as agile teams. Like, let's take for example a sprint retro. I mean, a sprint retro wasn't invented because we want to show the things that we made before launching it. A sprint retro, well, the idea of having a sprint retro was coming before because it was an act to check how close we was with the solution that we developed with original needs. And I mean, and people representing those needs was definitely, you know, clients, customers, you know, like product owners, somebody that was, you know, acting as a proxy with users. Because why? Well, basically because Agile was born when software was something that you was developing in a place, and then you was distributing with CD-ROMs or floppy disks. You know, you remember those years, right? So you would buy a software in a box, and then you go home or you go in your company, and you start install things, setting up the software, and run the software by yourself. But we observed another change in those recent years, which is this, that our organization now are able to building software and running it at the same time. So they are in charge of designing and making the actual product and operating it at the same time. This is a big shift because it means that, first of all, we have people that will be involved from the very beginning to the very end, which is the idea of DevOps. Probably you heard this, right? So having a one product team very focused on customer needs that will follow the full development span. And yes, I mean, the DevOps, that is not about just developer operation. You know, it's not about how much time we are able to deploy software in production or how few operation deploy engineers has. It's more about establishing feedback loops. So if we are able to push our products out fast, we are able to gather feedback fast. And this is a great thing, because if we are trying to apply those ideas of shipping things fast and reducing the time between the ideation and the actual operation, well, if we are trying to apply those ideas to design, we could have something that, you know, we can call design ops. Yeah. sounds weird, but it's not that new. I mean, I did invented it. So, what is design ops? What we can call design ops? Oh yeah, it's about this. It's about having a continuous design operation, let's say. So, having a continuous process of finding needs and addressing those needs that doesn't end when a project, when a product is launched, but it's a continuous process of making things better. You know, I said before, operating in this gap about the things that we have now and the things that we would like to have. So, constantly. And of course, it starts from having this immediacy of feedback, starting having a sort of strict relationship between people that will imagine how the things should work and people that use those things. And definitely, it's about understanding. So building infrastructures and building systems so people that are sitting on a design chair can understand what's happening on the outside world. And for doing this, the first step is definitely looking at experiments. Like many people today in this stage said, oh yes, we should move to experiments. And this is great because we will start, see software, see the things that we are doing in a very different way of physical object, and something that we can change because, experiments is about pushing something out, see how the system reacts, and then, get back the feedback and the inputs that can come from the real usage. And it's about that. It's about measuring, instead of driving your efforts just by gut feelings, it's about, having fast feedback, having answers directly from people that are engaged with that. And, well, in ThoughtWorks we have those kind of way of managing things, right? So this is a typical wall that we have where we are setting projects that are driven by experiments. So we have like a very high level vision here, some customer hypotheses that are defining what a product could be, and then we have design experiments which are leveled down. So it's more specifically related to a part of the application. And then, we have story maps and data feedback that comes up, and we have like those things that we can call experiments walls. And on the experiments walls, you can find cards like that will try to capture requirements, not in a prescriptive way, but more in a, let's say, how can I say? Well, in an assumption way. So this is an assumption. When we say we believe that this capability will result in this outcome and we will know that it succeeded when, we are implicitly saying that we are not sure. We are not sure that this will work. And we need to do the least possible amount of software, amount of efforts to verify those things. I can give you a real life example. This is a card that comes from one of the projects I was engaged with. So we believe that making the teaser more prominent, so it's about layout, it's about evaluating what could be a difference on layout, can result on this, and we can result on more booking, and we know the success when we have a real impact on what's happening on the platform. Of course, this is an approach, and those data needs to be verified and needs to become some kind of natural way of checking those things. But okay, this is something that is becoming popular. Many people are talking about that. Great, but one thing that I believe people often forget is that to enable companies to act in this way, we need to work in two different stages, which from one side we can say is automation, so making operation to produce experiments automated as more as possible, and on the other side is about organization. And that's why the idea of design ops becomes very, very interesting, because it would be about automating design as more as possible and finding a new way of organizing design as a structure in the company. So The first thing would be this, would be enable others, designers and non-designers, so other designers, other people they are engaged, but as well as PO, marketing people, all the people that wants to have a software control on the design, to design. Because in this way, we can definitely minimize the effort that is required to produce those experiments and start maximizing the volume of feedback that we have. So we have a technology challenge that is definitely related to make those platforms that are resilient and that can be able to manage multiple experiments at a time, but also we have a design challenge, which is more about producing things so other people can do the design. I mean, can operate in this way. And this is very interesting because, I mean, design is, I mean, the designer's job has been very prescriptive. You know, it has been like telling other people what to do. In this case, we are enabling people to discover what they need to accomplish the experiments and their activities. And the designers will become more a supportive level. I mean, in this case, the design ops, because we are not talking about all designs. And we will see definitely that those ideas are becoming quite popular in the design community because we see this. We see that a lot of companies are focusing on creating pattern libraries, right? Which is basically a medium, which is basically a tool that allows other people, other designers, and also non-designers to assemble things, you know, to using those things as a block to produce, I don't know, landing pages, as well as new ideas for products, as well as different things that can be exposed to people, to users, and then evaluated. And this is, I mean, this is a big thing that is happening. This is from Salesforce, and they're doing a great job creating this lighting design systems, which is basically, I mean, a set of, you know, Lego bricks that allow people to produce experiments and to operate at design level in a very, very quick way. And this is how it looks inside. This is how all the elements and all the things can be, you will find, and you can assemble those things together. As well, you can have those kind of tools. Like this one comes from Airbnb. Airbnb starts having a huge culture of design ops. So people that will work to allow other people to make design. And this is a tool that it's useful to test, let's say, how the design respond when you have different copies in different texts, in different languages. But all those tools that are emerging are definitely trying to solve those problems explained here. So like keeping the company able to produce experiments quickly, but at the same time keeping consistency, support the autonomy of teams, because all those decisions, all those design decisions will be reduced at that team level where people knows, and because, I mean, we are looking for teams that will be responsible for and accountable for their specific product. Quality that will be centralized, so you don't need to test those components because those components has been tested before. So they are actually they are controlled and tested in different environments, as well as we are trying to make those things fluent and, you know, reinforce the accountability and reducing the risks when we are trying to move fast. And at the end, I mean, we can summarize all those crazy ideas about design ops in those 3 basic points, right? So we can have, we can move the organization to something that tries to learn constantly. And design will become a tool for getting knowledge. And since we are facing complex adaptive systems all the time, and we need to make experiments. And to make experiments faster, we need to allow people to assemble high-quality design artifacts as fast as possible. And to do this, also in relationship with the world, with the things that happens outside, we need to strictly connect design and operations. So we can create those short feedbacks and engaging better way of engaging this kind of process of continuous improving and continuous design. So that's pretty much what I have to say. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay. Okay. I'm sure you have questions.
Can you tell us some bad stories about design from your customers? I think you have some bad stories.
Well, I mean, it's quite easy to, because they are extremely common. So I think that many of you experienced the fact that it was that I don't know, somebody like, I don't know, a boss, let's say, had this idea of improving a product or creating a product from scratch, and then they jumped directly into software development. They jumped directly on creating things, and those are extremely common things that happens also at enterprise level, happens everywhere. And then, you know, you spend a lot of time creating a thing, and then when those things hit the market, it's a huge failure. I mean, I have a story that was a product that was made with a huge budget, and a lot of people was involved there, and it was indeed very, very complex. It was so complex that that at a certain point the project went out of control, and was, I mean, out of schedule and out of budget and all those things that you can imagine. And people were forced to work even during the weekends because, I mean, they had the deadlines and they want to make it. But when the project was launched, I mean, I had the occasion to observe how people reacted. And, I mean, there was like 6 months, roughly, of work. And how many people was doing all the things as people, I mean, as designer was expecting at the beginning? 3. So in 2 weeks, only 3 people used the product as it was intended. And, well, you know, that was not the best for the general spirit.
Thanks for a good speech, and I have a quite specific question. So basically, I would agree on every word, and I can sign off with every word which you said, but only if we are talking about product company. What about outsource companies? When we are working with the customers, with the clients who want to have predictable dates, who want to have fixed budgets, and so on. So what you would advise for those types of companies and teams? Thanks.
Well, well, I don't have direct experience with that because, I mean, I'm finding myself working in a lot of cases directly with companies that they are producing and running the software internally. But I have to say that I see a pattern here. I see somebody in the company producing tools, so people that works in a different location, in a different environment, so they are hired to do some specific job, they will find tools already there to assemble those things. So it's about automation in one sense. So it's about, so think about all the operation that you as a developer have to do to build a new app, let's say. So you have to do a lot of style, right? So like styling the things, so creating layouts, styling the buttons, and so on and so on. All those operations can be automated. And it's actually quite easy. And if you have people, they are dedicated to make, I mean, to realize those automation as fast and as fluent as possible, even if you're working abroad, even if you are not sitting on the same seat, or you can have those kind of exchange, and this is actually could be a good step forward.
It's more a question about you are doing design, customer sign off the design, right? So everyone happy. We produce the product, product going into market, and after that, so from legal perspective, everything great.
Mm-hmm.
We got our payments, everyone happy, but like in 1 month, customer get back to us and say, okay, sorry guys, but it doesn't work. I don't have.
Mm-hmm. Well, well, you should be happy because it means more money, more work, right?
Yeah, but the relationship with the customer could be.
Yes, yes, definitely, because they are still operating in this mindset of making something, launching something, and jumps to the next one. Well, yeah. It's about culture here. So it's about a big mindset shift so that you have to move from, keeping launching things on the market and trying to operating those things. So trying to push something out and then see how we react and acting already when you're doing things. And this is one of the key points of Agile. I mean, it was many people talking about that, talking about, working in small batches and see how the things you made react. So as a third part, let's say, your role would be supporting this process. So instead of focusing on a big launch that could happen in 6 months or in 1 year or so, so it's more about being a partner during the full span of a product. So from the first release to the second to the third and so on. So being a sort of, I said, a partner. I think that this would be the good mindset. But again, this is a very complicated system, let's say, because people on the other side, they will look for scalability and spending less money as possible. So it's tricky.
I propose to ask some questions during the coffee break and say thanks, Matteo.
Thank you very much.